All right, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Brooks Jarosz, the president of the San Francisco Northern California chapter. I'm excited to welcome you to this Q&A session as we approach that final stretch before the deadline to enter our regional Emmy Awards contest. Now, on behalf of the Board of Governors and our awards committee, our goal is pretty simple. It's to improve transparency, it's to build trust, and provide understanding in this entire process. The Emmy, of course, is the most recognized symbol of excellence in television, and this contest is really your chance to have your work celebrated among the best in our region. We want every member or entrant to feel confident about how entries are judged, what qualifies for submission, and how you can showcase your best work. These awards, after all, reflect the high standards we all strive for and serve as a benchmark for professional excellence in television and media. Now, this session is your chance to ask questions, clarify any details, and learn more about the steps involved from eligibility and categories to deadlines and judging criteria. Whether you're a first-time entrant or a seasoned participant, we're here to make sure the process feels accessible and fair. So thank you for being part of this conversation and for continuing to raise the bar in our craft. And let's dive into this and make sure this year's contest is the best yet. I now would like to introduce our awards chair, Pamela Young, who joins us from Hawaii, and vice chairs Paula Marcheschi and Kris Sanchez from right here in the Bay Area. Ladies, take it away.
Thank you, Brooks. Also joining us tonight, Executive Director Steve Shlisky, and I see some members of the awards committee. We've had a lot of inquiries, especially from first-time entrants on the Emmy process. So we're here to go over what happens next and to open it up to your questions. First of all, thank you for participating in this Emmy season. Presuming you filled out the entry forms online, submitted and approved your video, and paid the fees, your entry now undergoes screening by the awards committee. It's our job to make sure the judges see your entry with clean video, audio, and text, and we want them to give you the scores your hard work deserves. An important part of our certification process is checking for double dipping, and for that, I'm going to toss it to Paula Marcheschi.
Thank you so much, Pamela. I know we get a lot of questions about this every single year. If you look, we have a super clear call for entries online at emmysf.tv. So everything we're talking about here tonight, you can find that information on that call for entries. So I will give you kind of the most basic definition of double dipping. And you can also, again, go and look this up in the call for entries. But basically, it's no entry may be submitted in its entirety in more than one content category, and no entrant may be recognized more than once for performing the same job function for the same content. So let me give you some examples. For instance, if you are a reporter and you are named on an entry for Best Newscast, and during that Best Newscast, you have a breaking news piece, on the gas explosion in Hayward. If you are named as a reporter in that newscast entry, you can't then go take that same segment and enter the breaking news category. You can't put you cannot put that breaking news segment into a craft category and be named as a reporter. Now, there are some instances if you do more than one job on a particular piece of content. Say you are a photographer and you're also the editor. Say you have a piece, I'll just keep using the Hayward gas explosion because it was
top of mind,
so significant. But if you did a package on that and you were the photographer on that, and it got submitted in a breaking news category and you were the photographer and you wanted to put it on an editing craft reel because you were the editor of that package, you could also submit it as an editor. If you are only the editor and it's submitted in breaking news and you're the editor, you cannot then submit it in an editing craft category. If you are a producer on a piece and you also wrote the piece, you could submit that piece into a writing craft category. If you were, if you were listed as an editor, you could be listed also, as talent. If you are an MMJ, that encapsulates all the job titles, so that would be just admissible in the MMJ category. I hope that it kind of explains it. I think where we run into, and I've been certifying for many years, and I know Kris has, and I see Devin on the call, and Pamela, a lot of Terry, I see, has done a lot of certifying, and that's what we're looking for. So basically, we're looking that the same person isn't recognized for the same job title on the same piece of content. And if that, the only thing that is not subject to double dipping is the overall station excellence. So if a piece of yours ends up on the overall station excellence reel, that is not subject to double dipping, because that is awarded to the station general manager and the station news director, not to individuals whose work happens to end up on that reel. There's usually a lot of questions about double dipping. So if you have any, you can unmute or you can put them in the chat and we can answer them. Pamela or Kris, do you have anything to add on double dipping?
No,
I'm basically, sorry, go ahead, Pam.
No, go ahead.
You just can't win two statues for the same work. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I think we all understand why that would not be fair to win, for something like the Hayward explosion in one category and win for the same thing. We want to see all of your work. So we want to award you for all of your work.
Yeah, and that being said, that can't be and also another case of double dipping, actually, thank you. You just on my memory. If you are submitting a franchise or a series of one specific topic, you cannot then, if you're submitting let me see, there's a good example online here. Like if you have a franchise and your franchise is, I'm going to give you the example in the call for entries, this week's health advice. You can't then take another package from that and put it into multiple different categories, right? Because it is entered as that franchise series. You can put multiple of your series in or pieces in that franchise series, but then you can't go put that into another segment by itself.
Do we have any other questions about double dipping from anyone? Okay, should we go on to the
reach out anytime.
Can we go on to the judging?
All right, let's go on to the judging then. So you might wonder, what happens? We all pray to the news gods every single day in our newsrooms. The news gods are not responsible for the judging. You are responsible for the judging. People like you in newsrooms across the country, in all of our 19 chapters, they are the ones that are judging our work. So we are being judged by our peers. For our Emmy entries, the goal is to have no fewer than 6 judges that are qualified in what that category is. So when you go into emmyexpress.com, you are asked what categories you think you are suitable for, what categories you have expertise in. So you can say, I am a reporter, I am a producer, I'm an editor, I'm a photographer, and then you will judge in those categories. And those are the folks in our other chapters that are going to be judging your categories as well. So no fewer than 6 people are going to touch your entry. They will not know who you are. And we can't have more than 3 people from the same station or company or production company, etc. So this is really kind of a broad-based judging pool, which is why we hammer on you guys all the time about judging, because if we want the quality judging that we get, we have to provide the quality judging that we want. We do try for more than 6, but at the very minimum, you will have 6 people judging your entry in the categories that they are qualified to judge. So if I say I'm not a photographer, I say, well, I want to judge, photography or editing. That's going to flag as do I have that expertise and am I qualified to judge? So we do have, again, we have 19 chapters. Those are coming from different chapters. For the Spanish categories, we do send our contests to chapters that have Spanish speaking professionals that have contests where people are judging in their own in the Spanish language so that we are not just guessing and going based on transcripts and whatnot. As far as the judging goes, you will sometimes see that we will have categories where there is one winner. Maybe there's more than one winner. Maybe there is no winner. And that's because it's not competitive judging. So you're not saying like, I beat Paula, I'm going against Pamela. It's, did I meet the standard of excellence? And for the last couple of years, that standard of excellence has been a scale of 1 to 7. Previously, we had 1 to 10, but as you might have noticed when you judge, sometimes it's hard to touch those 10s and the 1s. So it just kind of makes more sense to shove people in a smaller bracket. So 1 to 7 is where people judge. And, it is, again, a standard of excellence. It's not me versus you versus him, etc. In the craft categories, we are being judged on creativity and execution, and that in the programming categories, the content categories, it's creativity, execution, also content. And again, it goes back to the double dipping. You will not receive an award for the same work in more than one category. And again, come awards night, you might hear 1 winner, 2 winners, if we meet that standard of excellence, that cutoff, or we may see no winner if nobody reached that bar. So that is the judging. And again, you can see all of this in the call for entries at mesf.tv.
Can I add, we usually get questions at the end of an Emmy season of how come this category had no winners? And it's because we're not competing against each other. There is a standard of excellence. And if none of the entries reached that level of excellence, then there are no recipients.
And we don't know
stories before.
And we don't know, Steve is going to talk about the blind scoring. We don't know what categories those are. When we get those scores back, it will say, here's the range, and depending on what the cutoff is, it'll be one, more than one, or none. And it's not like we can say, all those sports stories or all those weather stories or all those breaking news stories didn't cut the mustard. We don't know what they are.
And we also don't know any of the scoring. It does not come back to us. It goes to our accountant in Pennsylvania, and then she and Steve work out a code system for blind scoring. So Steve, you want to explain what blind scoring is all about?
Sure. I'm going to share my screen here. So what you're seeing here is a sort of dashboard of our contest from last year. Across the bottom, Ohio Valley, Pacific Northwest. These are the chapters that we will share judging with. We judge some of theirs, you judge some of ours. We try to get at least 3 chapters to judge each entry. As was said before, 2 or 3 judges from one chapter. So it's multiple chapters, usually try about 3. We're looking at our dashboard from last year, listing of number of entries and so forth. This is what the other chapters will get. And they'll start their judging. So it's a share. So
are other people seeing Steve's screen? Because I'm not seeing it.
I'm seeing it.
I am seeing it.
Huh.
On the top, Devin, of the Zoom, do you see 2 tabs? One might say meeting and one says the office's screen. You have to be on the tab that says SFNC office's screen.
Yeah, there was some weird thing that said share screen. And once I clicked it, now I see it.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so next slide. So this we're seeing is in fact, if we look at overall news excellence, there were 2 judges from 4 chapters. So as you can see, there were at least 3 chapters for each, but it looks like we got 8 judges for each of our different categories. And you see they sort of bounce around, but this gives us a broad spectrum across the US about all the different chapters that are seeing this. So it's not just one chapter, it's looking at everything in one category. It's across a bunch of chapters. This is what each individual chapter would see. I'm looking at Natus Northwest. If you're familiar with judging and you go into judging and you can pick the category you want to judge, we're looking at Northwest here. This might be on your dashboard when you get to judging. This is what other judges will see. And of course, it'll say Natus, NorCal up here, and they'll see our categories and they'll choose the categories. Anybody who's judged is familiar with this dashboard. This is, and again, if you haven't judged before, this is what a judging ballot looks like. When you do sign up for judging and you would hit the button, and then this has 14 category. Let's see, yeah, a possible 14 on this particular entry. You would hit judge, and you would go in and see a screen like this, and you play the video. And then you get to judge. So some of our categories have 3 categories you judge from: content, creativity, and execution. In the craft categories, it's just creativity and execution. So these have a possible of 14 points for these categories. And the other categories have a possible 21 points. So when we talk about blind scoring, this is so after everything's gone for judging, everybody's done their totals, it goes to an accountant, and an accountant just gives us raw numbers back. And this is what the awards committee at our chapter will see. These reflects every entry that was judged in all the other chapters. So if we're looking at this, Adams, Adreny, Anderson, Anthony, these all represent categories. We don't know what category Adams represents. This could be a crime category, or this could be a anchor news category. We have absolutely no idea. The one thing is the English contest is separate from the Spanish contest, so there is a separate blind scoring for Spanish. And so our committee sits down. We've been doing this on Zoom, but at times we sat down all in one room and we start talking about the categories. And if you look at Adams and we see this top one, this pink one, we see that in this category, there is sort of an overall winner here. They got 91.36. That's reflective of the 7-point scale when you judged. It goes to a 100-point scale when the judges see it. And we look at this and we see there's 80s and 90s here. Well, the 90, that one is by sure will receive an Emmy Award. The ones that are yellow will have nominations. And as you can see, there's a 7-point difference here. So there is there's an A and a B side here. And then it starts to drop off further down. So in this category, we had 3 nominations and 1 recipient. This category had 1 winner that was so much better than everybody else. They're head and shoulders above everyone else. This one would have 1 winner in it. We don't call them a nominee when it's just one. It's just 1 winner, and you would see just 1 name when you get to the gala, and you know that one's a winner. If we go down to like Bliss, and we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 nominees and 1 overall winner because these scores are very, very close together. And then it drops off to 75. And then, oops, sorry, too far. We go down here to, let's go to Bell. We look at Bell, and we have 2 scores that are exactly the same. Well, both of those were winners. And so there would be 4 nominees in that category, but 2 winners of that. And again, the Spanish and the English contests are completely different. So we have a different blind scoring for the Spanish side. And so this is English and Spanish. This would have been, this is last year's full blind scoring. And the last thing I'll leave you with here is what we try and do is make sure we have of all the entries that come in, that 10% are winners that receive Emmy Awards, and that 30% are nominees. That's our sort of goal, is to earmark or to make sure we have 10% winners and 30% nominees. So we get through one pass and we go, oh, we've got only 5% winners and 40% nominees. We'll go back and readjust based on the scoring. So we go through generally a number of passes. It might be 3 or 4 passes at times before we get to sort of totals the way that we like them.
I have a question in regards to um, the actual when you're applying to submit a show. I was a little confused. It said like on one of the crime things, it said no time limit, and then when you clicked on it and went to the next page, it said 15-minute time limit on it. So I was a little confused on that.
That means no production time limit. So that means you have more than one day to do the story. I believe if that's what we're looking at, if you can
Yeah,
pull
it
it up.
means in case you
But-
took, because there's single shift and there's no production time limit. So the stories that were completed in one day go to single shift. And if you took more than one day, then it's no production time limit. The time limit of 15 minutes is what you submit.
Okay, thank you for that. This is my first time being involved with this on a TV station, a PEG station, SAC Live TV, and we do some independent coverage here in the Sacramento area. So I submitted a very long format, so I probably got kicked out of there.
What you can
Well,
do
you
is
won't get disqualified without a phone call from us. Or
Okay.
yeah, no, we'll let
that's
you
the
know.
thing. We
We'll
we
work
reach
it
out.
out.
Thank
And it
you.
could be that you just resubmit an excerpt of that work.
Okay, I'll have my guys work on that. It was a podcast talking about Sacramento being the headquarters for trafficking in California, and it was kind of explicit, but it needed to get the word out. So I'll go back in and start editing that down to a 15-minute segment for you guys. Thank you very much.
Well, welcome
then
to
you-
the contest.
And there are rules. Just make sure you take a look. There are rules about excerpts. I think you can have 3 lifts typically, and you put a second of black between them. So you can take 3 segments that equal, or 3 lifts that equal that 15-minute.
I saw that, but you have to have a little black section there so we
Yeah,
can.
1 to 2 seconds between each video.
Thank you very much. I'm going to leave you guys to talk about your judging thing there, and I'll go back to being a submitter. Thank you.
Awesome. Good luck.
If you want- if you-
Respond to Devin's comment. So it doesn't end up. He mentioned it's 25% nominations, and it's anywhere between 25 and 30% nominations. We can't make those numbers exact, and there's a process of generally, we say 10% winners. It could end up being 8% or 13%. So there's a little bit of a window there.
And
But
those percentages are not dictated by us, they're dictated by national. And we just have to be in the ballpark, because if we're way off base, then they'll come back to us and say, what's wrong? Why are you giving so many more trophies than the nominees determine?
And that is
So-
really to protect the integrity,
Yes,
of the
exactly.
award. And if you kind of go back to where Steve was sharing, the blind scoring, like if you look at a category that has 0 winners, I don't know if we have one in there. Generally, basically, a 90% means that it is Emmy Award worthy, which is why sometimes we have multiple winners. You might see, or you might see in the case of like Bell, there's 2 85s, like it's the same score. So we would give this, 2 winners. Basically, a 90% is Emmy or above Emmy Award winning worthy. In the 80s, it's might be Emmy Award winning worthy, because you also might have a particularly tough batch of judges, which often happens. And then if it's 70s, it might be nomination worthy, right? Or in 80s is generally nomination worthy. So that's where you see like some of the categories. If it's very strictly judged, like all the numbers are low, you might see a winner in the 80s. Typically, the winners are in the 90s. And then in some cases, if they're all like 60s and below or 70s and below, then that means that no one was winning worthy or award worthy. I guess it's not winning, it's you're receiving the award. Then we would not, we would not designate nominees, because we don't want to nominate people and then have no winner, right? That would be, or no recipient, sorry, not winner, recipient. we wouldn't have we don't want to nominate people and have no recipient.
Yeah, if you look at Dwyer, you see that there's a big gap between 95 and 90, but they're all in the 90s. And so
And
if it's got a
90s are
90 or over, it's going to be a recipient. If we look over here at cable, this is one of those marginal, do we give one at 82.5 or do we have no winners in that category? So this is just up for discussion during the blind scoring.
I'd
And
love
again,
to
we don't know
provide
what
just a
category it is.
little bit of context to people, just to go back through what all of our awards chair, vice chairs, and what Steve has shared. First, sort of reflecting on the contest as a whole, the rules are really set in place by National, where they give every chapter guidelines. So no matter where you're competing within the country, you have similar sets of rules and guidelines. But each chapter has its own awards committee that does this very process that we're discussing here tonight. Now, why do other chapters judge? Well, we don't want to be judging ourselves. So that's why Steve is going to be sending out all the entries that come into this contest to other chapters. Why split it up to different chapters? Well, we know that judges who are working or living in Miami are going to be judging differently than those judges living and working in Seattle. And so we want to make sure that we have a diversity of judges that are looking at your entry. So there's no thought that, well, they are biased against my work in the Bay Area or in Sacramento because they have a different style that may exist in Miami or in that Suncoast chapter. Why do we blind score? One of the reasons that we look at everything blindly is we don't want any of our members to think, or for any of us to inadvertently make a decision based on what category something is in, the person that is actually up for or competing in a particular category. So by us just looking at percentages and categories blindly, we're able to really just focus in on the numbers and make sure that we're equally applying the number of recipients versus the number of nominations equally. That's where those targets come in, of not awarding more than 10% of our entrants a statue, and then nominations follow between 25 and 30%. Why do we have an accountant? The accountant is that independent person that can review all those numbers and make sure that there aren't any outliers. They will point that out to us and say, look, you had a judge here who was really tough, rating many people ones and twos. We may decide to throw out that judge under the advice of our accountant to make sure that we are getting numbers that are fair and accurate so we can apply those rules across the board. And then what happens after the blind scoring? After the awards committee reviews and determines that this is the final outcome, what you're seeing on your screen right now, the pink being the Emmy recipients, the yellow being the nominees. We all sign off on it, and then it goes back to our accountant and the executive director to then transfer that to the actual nominations that we announce during our nomination night. And so none of us are privy to who's nominated in advance other than the executive director and our accountant. And so when that all comes out, that is based on the determination we made during blind scoring.
Yeah, so when they read on stage, when they have the envelope and they read the envelope, they don't even know who the winner is until that envelope is opened. So generally, it's only the executive director and the accountant are the only ones that know the winners beforehand. So done with the share. I will stop the share.
Okay. Yeah, we've had some inquiries as to, whether or not the awards committee has the advantage of inside information. And that is absolutely not true. When we get the entries and we send them off, that's it. We don't know the results. The results are sent to the accountant. And Paula may know the nominees a couple of days before because she has to do the graphics. And then Kris and I may know it the day
But I will
before the
never
nominees.
tell.
Right. And we're sworn to secrecy. In fact, I have the trust of everyone on the awards committee that they have just been hardworking and trustworthy throughout this whole process. And so, that's one of the things that we have to preserve is the integrity of our contest and of the Emmy name and image and trophy.
And Pamela mentioned, the certification process, and probably some people on this call have gotten calls from us asking questions to clarify. Can you clarify this role? Can you clarify this piece of content? Is it in the right category? Because what can happen during this judging process is a judge from another market might have questions and they might challenge the entry. Now they are instructed to still judge your entry, but what we're trying to achieve is like 0 challenges. When it goes to the judges, we want it to be in the category it belongs, with the content that belongs there, with the correctly designated roles for each entrant, right? We're trying to avoid those challenges. And so when we go through the certification process, all the people who are certifying, no one would ever, like I do enter the contest. I would never certify in a category that I'm in. So I would never go in and look at the other entries in my category because I don't even have access to it because it would never be a category that I'm assigned to certify. And then we also do try to really limit the number of entries that anybody on the committee has. I mean, we're all still television professionals or media professionals. We do still enter the contest, but not at a high volume so that we can certify as much as possible. But just so you know that we avoid that conflict of interest also. Like I don't even have access to go in and look at my category.
The system has a lot of
never...
guardrails, and especially this new Emmy Express system, you cannot see what has been entered and what is being judged unless you're the executive director, and as long as there's no conflict. So, and everyone on the committee knows that, and it's just been very straightforward, and we've been very proud of our what's been happening in the past couple of years. So yeah, so it's very honest, and we make sure it is, and that's one of the goals that National has, to preserve the integrity of the Emmy, and that's why we have limits not only on our committee but on other members, because we don't want to be handing these things out like M&Ms like some chapters do. The Emmy is a very prestigious trophy, and we want to keep it that way.
And
So
I
does
will
anybody
say,
have
I judge. I've been judging. I shouldn't date myself, but I'm going to. I've probably been judging more than 30 years. I've seen the process evolve, and it is by far the most like blind, most fair, and I judge other awards, organizations as well. I won't name names, but they are not nearly as unbiased or, have the breadth of judging and requirements that Natus has in place for us with the Emmys.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Edgar has a raised hand.
Hi, yes. Nice to meet everyone. So this is my first time submitting. It will be under the director category. I work for Telemundo, so it would actually be under the Spanish director category. And I think this is the first year that that category has been introduced for the director category. I'm looking on the category list just to kind of get a better understanding. There really isn't much information besides PL track referred. So I was wondering if you guys can elaborate a little bit more as to what are the judging expectations for a director, because we're running a show, right? Not necessarily the content. So I'm guessing creativity, execution. Are there anything else you guys look for, or the judges look for that category?
Kris, did you want to say anything? You're muted.
Hi, Edgar. Welcome to the contest. I am your point person for the Spanish contest. However, as a reporter anchor, directing is not my forte. So I don't. Steve, can you answer questions about directing, like what they would be looking for?
Well, and I'm not a director either. So it
Oh,
will be directors that look at it. That's the important aspect of it. So I think it's important to have a PL track on there because, directors know what that is, which is one of the reasons why we don't have editors and photographers judge director tracks because I don't know if they'd make a lot of heads or tails out of what a PL track is.
But
So
it's not required,
it's not
right? You could
required.
if you have a show that's really clean and well directed, or even breaking news, right? The directors watching would know even without the PL track because not everybody records a PL track.
yeah.
And I think that the fact is that directors are looking at this and not another um, person who doesn't have expertise in that. So you know what's good, and so other directors will know what's good. I mean that I think that goes for any category. That's the best way that I have to describe it, I think. I do know that director that I know that has won the category a few times in English, really swears by putting the PL track in there. And he does judge other directors as well. Again, it's on the English side, not the Spanish side.
I bet
And
he would he would
he does value having the PL track.
I bet he would um talk to you if you reach out to him.
And in fact, his phone number is in the call for entries. His
Yeah.
name is Randy Forsman. And if you go to the call for entries, there's a list of committee members there, and his name and his phone number is right there, and his email address.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually did reach out to Randy on LinkedIn and he helped a lot on answering questions like that. Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
He
Yeah.
has won many times.
Yeah, I did see. Yeah, yeah. So he was a great resource. And then on that 15-minute time frame, this is not just a 15 minutes of one show, right? I can do set portions of multiple shows.
I
I'm
believe if
let me
it's a
look in
craft
the
category, I think you
description.
can.
It's 77 is the category. Let me just take a look at it here.
Yeah,
Uh,
so this would be a craft category, which Edgar, that's going to be judged on 14 total points for the judges, 7 for creativity, 7 for execution. So your creativity could be judged on things like the camera moves you do, how you direct that show, the bells and whistles you add to it, and execution, it falls into that as well. And that's something you can do a composite for, just like a reporter could put a couple of different stories together for a reporter craft. You could do the same, but it cannot be a montage. So it can't be 10 seconds here, 10 seconds there. It has to be, excerpts from various shows.
and there is a 15-minute time limit.
And
Gotcha.
we have had nominees that included the track and have not included the track. But I realize the ones that have really taken notice of the judges are when directors react to unexpected circumstances.
Right.
So if
Okay.
you have any of those, throw them in.
Okay.
And
Thank you
even
very much.
with the producer track, I mean, because we don't always know when we should be rolling on that, that your précis, your description of your entry, you can mention that because the judges are also going to read that. And like these are the extenuating circumstances. We had a power outage in the middle of the newscast, whatever, and explain what those challenges were, and that doesn't directly replace the producer track, but it will supplement.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you very much.
And I do need to make one other comment here. So that right now is an under submitted category. So if we don't get at least 4 or 5 in there, that's not one we would roll up. Is that right, Pamela?
Well, Spanish is exempt.
It is exempt. So if there's only one entry in there, we would let it sit.
That's something we would have to discuss with Kris of how she'd want to handle that if we just had one entry.
Yeah. So to make this category viable, you may want to, talk to other directors to enter it. So, at least there's a competition.
Right.
Did we-
Yes.
Did we discuss viability? I don't think
No.
to make the
I don't think we
contest
did.
viable, we have a suggested minimum number of entrants into the category. So sometimes you might receive if a category has 2 entrants, you might receive a call from Pamela or Kris or me saying there's only 2 entries in this category. It's not a viable category. We're going to put your category into, like, let's say it was crime and justice short form, and there was a crime and justice long form. There weren't enough in the short form. We're going to put those 2 categories together. At that point, you can opt to receive a refund and not enter, or you can opt to roll into the other category. But that's not something we would decide on our own. The affected entrants would be contacted about their entries.
And we'll
So
give
that's
you
what we
an
mean
option.
by viable. There has to be enough people because, again, we're
Yeah.
trying to maintain the integrity of the contest. It can't just be one entrant and you're like, okay, you won, congratulations. So that's not how it works.
We'll try to give you options because sometimes you can switch it to another category that your entry fits in, or you can ask to withdraw and get a refund.
Okay.
Or it might go from a content category to a craft category.
Right.
I think we have.
There's another hand raised.
Matt?
Hi, yeah, thanks so much for having this Zoom. I just had a question about the production roles that you're able to select in the drop-down menu. I recently took over a submission for a show that traditionally has had, excuse me, like a composer for original music that they've had as a production role that they've submitted for and has been recognized. I didn't see that in the drop-down menu, so I was just wondering, is there a process if there's a role that has been recognized before, but is not selectable in that drop-down menu?
So the role that you want is composer?
Yes.
So there's a couple of options. You can petition the committee and explain what role as a composer it played in the piece. You can also consider changing that to another role, say producer, or look at the craft categories. So those are the 3 options that you can do.
So I would put the name on the entry, and put him as a producer, and then shoot us a note and say, I listed this as a producer, but it should actually be composer.
That's actually exactly what I was going to do. I already submitted as a producer. Where should I shoot the note?
So
you can, to either any of us.
And our email addresses are on the call for entries on the website.
So my role here is I take my direction from the awards committee and the awards chair. So you would maybe talk to Pamela, and if she okays it, she will let me know. And I will then create that role for that particular category and let you know that it's there and it's open for you. So it's a case by case process.
We just need a written request so that we can consult other members of the committee to get approval.
Makes total sense. Great. I will be sure to do that. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And then Susan had, it looks like Jonathan has a question.
Hi, there you go. I can see myself. Cool.
Jonathan.
How's it going?
Jonathan, we should be asking you the questions. This is a very accomplished Emmy, multi Emmy winner, Jonathan Bloom.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yet I have questions. Actually, I have 2 questions about categories for which the rules changed a little bit last year, and this year I'm kind of running up against those rules and wondering what's permissible. For MMJ, I believe last year you guys added the 90-10 rule, and I'm wondering when it comes to archival footage, if something is like historical footage, if it's like 50 or 60 years old and I couldn't have possibly shot it myself within my lifetime, does that count against the 10% quota for file footage?
I think, again, that would be a case by case question. If you could submit the piece and we could put it before the committee to see, because I think you can go beyond the percentages if it's used in a unique way.
Like you're not just you're not retracting the historical package, right? You still had to take that historical footage and edit it as part of your MMJ submission, right? So
Right.
Just have to, if there are excerpts of footage, I think, that would be.
Yeah, I found myself using a lot of like very old footage in a couple of stories this past year, and I think the old footage does generally exceed 10% in those particular stories. But so, what's an example of a unique way that you guys think would qualify?
Well, there was one story we had years ago about how they found a beached whale and they had to get rid of it and they decided to put a bomb in it. And
Wayne. It's Wayne's
yes,
story.
exactly. So, but they had to use the original footage of the whale, and I think it did exceed that. But basically, the story was how they resolved that issue and the aftermath. So I think, we passed that.
And you could always consider, like, you could put that in an editing category, or, if it really doesn't match MMJ, then maybe it matches somewhere else, like a historical category or another craft category that's not MMJ.
Okay. Um, and then my second question is about the interview discussion category, which I've never entered before, actually. There was an entry in the winning entry in 2024, I believe, was of a format that very closely approximates something that I'm considering submitting. It was an interview that was a two-camera sit-down interview that was edited for time, and B-roll was put over top of that. And I know that last year's winner was much more in a podcast format and much less production on that. And so I'm wondering if 2024's recipient would still be eligible today, or if the rules have changed substantially for that category.
The rules have changed because we've added a new category, 25, talk program, specifically for interviews that have a less formal situation, and it includes podcasts. So you might take a look at the requirements for 25.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
Paula, you wanted to say something?
I'm actually just going to the call to entries for the distinction. I know because one was, one could contain B-roll, right, and be more produced, and the other was supposed to be, I think, no more than like 10% B-roll, right?
Yeah,
It was
the percentage of actual live content is
right.
in the description.
The interview can
75%
be
dialogue
edited,
driven.
but yeah.
I'm sorry?
On the talk program, it's 75% dialogue driven. So that's largely unscripted.
So
I think that's different, scripted, unscripted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say in the case of this, it's all unscripted. It's all, it's all a sit down Q&A, but the final result is half the length of the original sit down interview, and some of those cuts for time were covered with B-roll. So I'm trying to figure out where that could potentially fit.
I think that fits more in interview and discussion because it's not a talk program, right, Pamela?
Yes, I mean it's blurry because there's some people who feel that the reason talk program came about is because we wanted to make a difference between the official debates and the panel discussions among government officials and the morning shows and the talk shows where it's just two people sitting down and chatting. So that's the difference between the two. But I think you'd have to take a look at the requirements for how much live and how much cover you can include in each.
Okay, I didn't recall there being a number. Is there a number that I missed on that for how much can be covered?
Does
I'm
it
not.
say?
No, I think
I'm not seeing
that's
it. I
totally
don't see it.
permissible. If
Yeah.
Jonathan, if it's totally organic and there's nothing scripted about it, I don't see an issue. I think
Okay.
you're totally fine. But I think the awards committee is suggesting too that you also look at that new category because it may fit better than, say, a debate or something. Is that
Okay.
correct, Pamela?
Yes.
Okay.
And Jonathan, there's a strategy in the back of my head. I just thought I'd mention this, that, it's the judges who ultimately decide. It's in the category, and I generally try to make it so that when a judge looks at it, they don't say, well, this seems like it's in the wrong category. It should be over there. Because if a judge is thinking that way, they're going to knock you down somewhere. They're not supposed to be doing that, but I always try to look at this from the judge's perspective. If they think it's in the right category, and if it's wishy-washy, if you're not sure, I add something into pre-sys to convince them it's in the right category.
And that's a good point. But it does say, okay, so in interview discussion, it says 75% unscripted. And then it does have a note that says some visual elements may supplement the interview, but entries for this category are typically live or recorded live and not heavily post-produced. There should be limited B-roll and/or graphic elements. So I think if you're just covering some cuts for time, that's fine. But if you had graphs that you added that weren't laid in live, then that might be crossing the line. For talk program, it says intended for talk programs featuring more eclectic elements that go beyond the interview discussion category. For, like they say, this is an example of a national program, but the Kelly Clarkson show. So this would be more like a Mornings on 2, where they might have viewer call. I mean, I don't know about morning, but some of the Sacramento morning shows that have interviews or discussions, demonstrations, like audience Q&A, that would be more talk program. So I think what you're saying is interview, because it's not a talk program, That's
Right.
not
Okay.
it wasn't going into one of those shows.
Yeah, I guess the only question I have is is the amount of B-roll, because it was post-produced, I had the luxury of time to find B-roll to go with each answer, basically. Oh, Paula, you're muted.
Sorry, it says not heavily post-produced. If it is very heavily post-produced, I might consider putting it into a category based on the topic, right?
Got it.
To an interview.
Let's see. What does Devin say?
Because otherwise, like a lot, now there's a lot of NatSot pieces that get, and those could all be interviews, right?
I see what you're saying.
Right. But those go into the category that they're, topic-based category.
Right. No, that
like arts
totally
and
makes sense.
entertainment or lifestyle.
Okay. It's very informative. I really appreciate your time answering this.
Thank you. I have a note from Devin asking about underperforming categories. And I think we do have a list, but I think we had decided to put it out the same time that we put out the deadline reminder, which would be Thursday, because we are expecting more, and we're getting like I don't know, 10 or so entries every day. So we'd like to hold off because those numbers are going to be changing.
If it weren't for the last minute, we would never get anything done.
Yeah, I will be sending
know.
a reminder list out either Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, saying you need to pay by the 31st before we go into a late charge. So that list of underperforming categories, I will add that to it.
Yeah, it's going to change. And one trend that I'm seeing is that it's the long form categories that are really suffering. This has been going on for several years now, as stations are losing staff and revenue. A lot of those long form entries came from PBS stations. And since the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has dissolved, we're seeing less and less of that. So fortunately, a lot of these long forms have short forms that they can be combined with. So we'll deal with that, as we approach the deadline. I have one question that was emailed to me about should we include anchor intros? Does anybody want to take that?
Some people do, and other people swear not to. I would only do it if you really, really need the context for your story. But you could consider putting that context into your précis. So that would be my suggestion. Also, Susan Bradley has a question in the chat, but she also has her hand raised. So Susan, do you want to ask it?
Yeah, or just read it from the chat. It's how do I find the minimum and maximum length of a video submission requirement in a particular category? I know, for example, in, say, one particular category, it was 3 lifts, but I don't see anything about the actual length. And if it's too short or too long, is it disqualified?
If it's too long, it will be disqualified. If you're entering a long category and it's too short, I guess we would probably
How
recommend you
do
put
I
it in.
find that out?
I can add a little bit more to this question. So it's a category where it's 30-minute limit and the program is longer than 30 minutes. So she's doing 3 lifts, but the lifts only come to 25 minutes.
That's
I was
totally
wondering
fine.
if that's going to be a problem because
That's
it's right,
totally fine.
because our language in there says a longer program can be cut down in 3 lifts to get to 30
Yes.
minutes, and she's under 30 minutes, so that was her
And
concern.
and as a very frequent judge myself, I will say that shorter is better.
Yeah, and to your other's point, don't waste judges' time. So if the anchor intro is just a repeat of everything you're going to tell us, don't waste our time. Cut it out.
Right.
Great. Thank you.
And there is no time limit on the lifts itself. Your first one can be 1 minute and the second one can be 7 minutes, as long as you just fit that limit for the total submission.
And you put the second or two of black in
Right.
between the lifts. And then when you do that, not for lifts, but if you do a composite, just remember that you do have to fill out the composite information. And if you don't, the certifier will come ask you for it. So if you want to avoid emails from us,
Great. Thank you very much.
February, fill out your forms.
Any other questions? Okay, then I need to remind people of some deadlines. The entry deadline is this Saturday. The late entry deadline is February 15th. You can still enter with a fee. The video upload deadline is the 22nd. And on that same day, the master list will come out. Last day to move a category is February 28th. The last day to add names to your entry is March 31st. And we will actually begin certification on the 16th, as long as everything in Emmy Express is copacetic. And so some of you in the committee have given me your preferences, and for the most part, it's going to be the same thing that you certified last year. So it's a arduous and tedious process, and I thank everybody who volunteers to do that.
Just to be clear on the deadline, so after the 31st, so probably Sunday or Monday, anybody who has not paid will see a $35 extra charge to there. So when we say late entry, we're really talking about the money and getting the money in. Automatically, the way this app works that you're submitting to will automatically add a $35 charge to anybody who hasn't paid their fees by the 31st, or end of day on the 31st, and we're talking Hawaii time. So,
yeah. And then also, sorry, one clarification. I think the entry master list comes out on Monday, February 16th. So, and what you would use if you're new to entering or new to the process, what you would use the master list for is to make sure that your station hasn't entered something that you worked on and you weren't on, right? You could look at what your station has entered. It might be that you forgot to add somebody. That's why we give you until that March 31st date to add names. There is a late fee involved with that, but at least you can make sure that your work was represented, that you represented everybody on your pieces. I know sometimes it's like herding cats. I mean, like getting people to answer, do they want to be on the entry or not? They might answer late, or you might see a piece that somebody forgot, I'm sure by no malicious intent, but that they might have forgot to add you to. So that's why we publish that master list, to make sure all the names are correct. That way you can also know, oh, I didn't pay for that, or, oh, my video didn't actually upload. I can upload now. That's why we publish that master list.
So let me make that correct. Is it the master list on the 16th still?
On the 16th.
Okay, I'll change that. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope people got some information out of it.
Any final questions?
Reach out anytime with questions.
We hope this session brought some, clarity and confidence to the awards process. And of course, if you have any other questions in the coming days, please reach out to any of us and we're happy to help answer them.